Well, it has begun. I don't know what happened with you on Thanksgiving. Hopefully it was a wonderful Thanksgiving. Some of you I know might have been straight from the Thanksgiving Day meal to get the Christmas preparations and shopping done. But it seems like Thanksgiving's over. We don't have to be thankful anymore. Now we just have to focus on Christmas and the preparation. And in Christmas, there's always a lot of preparation to do. There's so many things to do. And one of the things that you always see on Facebooks and commercials and everything is trying to say, hey guys, a little Christian saying, remember the reason for the season and all the busyness. But in some ways, even the busyness of Christmas speaks part of what God is saying in this verse. Because in the busyness of life, we can be so preoccupied with the preparations of what we have to do that we lose sight in the reason. We lose sight in the focus and what life is really all about. So this is Christmas season. Advent is what we call it here. And we have the next about 6 weeks that we're going to be focusing on, at least Will Ferrell's favorite Jesus, baby Jesus. And as we focus on Jesus coming and making himself man, we're focusing on this incredible truth. Someone once said that if you know what Christmas is and you can explain it, and you know what Easter is and you can explain that, then you know everything you need to know about Christianity. At least you know the fundamentals and you know enough to share your faith. You know enough to share other people about the hope and why we have hope in Jesus. Because Christmas to Easter is really actually the gospel story. And in some ways it might be strange how we do this in the calendar year, where we have different days celebrating different parts of the life of Jesus. But that's what we're doing when we're doing the Advent season. That's what we're doing when we're doing the Easter season. As we go throughout the calendar year, we have different days that we focus on remembering Jesus. And knowing that, and knowing that this is the baby Jesus time, this reading should be confusing. Because why are we talking about this end of time? The end is near kind of posters, we're apocalypse now kind of thing. Why are we talking about that when we're talking about this Christmas and the beginning of Advent? Well, like any good movie, often it shows the end first, and then you go and you see what's going to happen, and it draws it all to a conclusion. In the same way, sometimes it's really helpful to know where you're going to end, to know where you're going. To know where the conclusion and the climax happens, to know how you should live in the meantime. And there's a lot of people that like to watch about the end of times. There's a lot of people that like to focus on it. In fact, there's been a lot of predictions about when time was going to end. 2000 was one of them, Y2K. Another one that was really famous is actually 2012 because of the Mayan calendar. We're obsessed, and that one, unfortunately, didn't happen, right? We're always bummed out. The apocalypse didn't happen again. I guess we're going to have to wait longer. But I think it's interesting because we focus so much on the waiting. So for today's illustration, I'm actually wearing my illustration. It's a watch. I don't usually wear a watch. I never wear a watch, in fact. Partly because I just have my phone on me, and I just got out of the habit of wearing watches. My wife talks about the reason she doesn't wear a watch. It's because she used to, and she would just constantly be checking it. She'd just look at it over and over until it became an unhealthy habit. Everyone thought she wasn't enjoying the conversation she was in at the time because she kept going back to her watch. It's like, and then people were like, do you have something better to do? And she's like, no, I just have to check. Because it became this habit of just wanting to know the specific time. And likewise, when the time change happened, it was interesting because our cat would always woke us up in the morning when it wanted to be fed. And all of a sudden, it was waking us up an hour too early, and we tried to tell it, no, the time has changed. It's no longer 7 o'clock. It's now, 8 o'clock. You need to wait an hour. To which the cat responded, meow, which parents know that means now, right? It's feed me, now, eat, It doesn't really matter what time it is. We're so focused on time. So why do we watch time so closely? Why in this culture are we constantly watching? And what are we really watching for? Part of it is we're always like looking at the next thing that we have to go to, because we've got busy, important lives. We've got things to get to. We've got things to do. And all those things are often just distractions. Distractions from what life is really about. If I was able to calculate, for instance, a man calculates the end of time. He finds out when the world's going to end based on his incredible intellect. He also calculates how much life he has biologically, naturally, so he knows when he'll likely die. He finds out it's not till 60, 70 years, so he thinks, well, I've got a lot of life left to live. I've got plenty of time to waste. So he goes out and he parties, he celebrates, and he gets drunk, drives home, gets in a car accident, and his life is over. See, the knowledge of the time you might have or should have doesn't matter as much as the daily choices that you make. We can't control what happens tomorrow, and we don't know when Jesus is going to return. I believe that Jesus will return, but I don't know when. But I can control this moment. When we watch time so closely, it seems like we almost think that every moment is as valuable. But that's not true, is it? See, every moment is not as precious. And your brain knows this. Can you think back to a moment in your life that you can remember every detail? Where 1 minute seems like it's a week of time because you can remember everything that happened in that moment? Or the vast amount of time that you have no recollection of at all? My wife sometimes remembers things that she tells me I said and did, and I believe that I probably said and did those things, but I have no recollection of them happening because my brain thought that they were unimportant and just tuned it out. Men do this a lot. Not always when it's not important, but we do this a lot. Whereas there's other moments that I remember every second. Every tick of the clock, I remember every detail because that moment was more precious and important. And likewise, in our life, what matters more than the amount of minutes is how they pass and what we fill them with. One man said that a young man can be old in hours if he doesn't waste his time. A young man can be old in hours if he doesn't waste his time. It's an interesting perspective. James Dean even said, "Dream like you live forever, live as if you'll die today." And one of those days he was right. Another one, Mark Twain says, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time." The fear of death comes from the fear of life. In other words, he's saying that if you're afraid to die, it's because you're afraid to truly live. Those who have fully lived are not afraid to die. They know that they have done all that they needed to do and lived life without regret. And none of us want to be an old man filled with regret. So how do we do this? How do we live a life without regret? Well, there was a hospice worker that worked with a hospice for 30 years, and they ended up writing down a book of top 10 regrets of the dying. Now, I'm not going to go over the top 10 regrets, but it's interesting what some of them were. Because none of the lists had, "I wish I was more successful. I wish I pushed myself just a little bit harder and was a little bit more productive. I wish I took that business opportunity. I wish I invested in Apple. If I had invested in Apple 10 years ago, I'd be rich." Is not on the list. In fact, the number one regret is I wish I didn't work so hard. There's also, I wish I spent more time with my friends, more time with my family. I wish I said the things that I felt, but I never quite had the nerve to say. I wish I lived a life true to myself. You know, a Christian life is not all about happiness. That's not our ultimate goal. But we do believe that God came to give us life that's full. And I believe that the person that made you, the person that knit you together in your mother's womb, knows what is going to be the most full life that you could live. And I believe that if we look to Him, to how we should live our life moment by moment, we'll live the most full moment of our lives. And I can tell you that the most full experiences that I've experienced all included God. Usually God in worship where I experienced His presence and I just knew that I was exactly in the plan of God. I aspire to be like Paul, who was in prison and still filled with this joy. In prison, he said, "I am content in all circumstances and filled with joy." So even when he was in jail, he was worshiping God, he was thankful because he knew he was right where God wanted him. See, the best place that we can be, the best place that any of us can be that most happy and full in our lives is right in the palm of God. If we surrender our life to Him, if we allow Him to have control of our life, then we'll live lives the fullest. For those of you who love Braveheart, we know that all men die, but not all men truly live. So, what do we do to not waste the time we are given? We don't know when it's going to end. We have very little control. You can't control tomorrow and you can't control others. There's one thing that you can control, and it's yourself. It's how you live this moment at this time. And all of us, hopefully, are surrounded right now with people that we love. And we had an opportunity on Thanksgiving where we were surrounded by people we love. But it's so easy to take each moment for granted. It's so easy to not say the things that we really need to say and to deal with the things that we really need to deal with. Whether it's wrongs in our lives that we need to make right, or just words that we just don't say enough, like, "I love you. I appreciate you. Thanks for being there for me." These words that we never say and we never think enough. You know, one of the things that's interesting when I look over this reading and when I see some of the words of Jesus about the end of time, it doesn't seem to matter when it's going to happen. In fact, most scholars believe that Paul and Peter thought that the end was near. They thought that in their lifespan, Jesus was going to come back again. And it's been 2,000 years since then, so they were at least 2,000 years off. And nowhere did Jesus say, "Hey guys," and look, if you read their letters, it's amazing how much they put together. Like, these are not stupid guys. The Holy Spirit taught these guys so many things and revealed to them so many amazing truths that still, to our lives today, make such an impact when we follow Him. They had wisdom that is beyond any of us. Yet, when it came to that, God didn't correct him. Instead, He reminded them to keep watch. If anything, He even encouraged that thought. Because if you live like God's going to come back at any moment, you live a life a little bit more full because you don't know. And you watch. Like someone standing in the ocean, you don't turn your back to the waves, you watch. So my encouragement to us, as we go throughout this Christmas season, especially, we have an opportunity usually to take a little bit more time away. And if we are like most people, that when we come to the end of our life, we're never going to regret taking time away. We are going to regret not taking time away. But I encourage us specifically that when we look at our clock, to not think about the next thing that we need to get to, but the gift of this very moment. That every time you look at a clock and you see that time tick, remember that that's a precious gift, and it's a gift that you can use. It's a gift that you can take hold of, and that's the gift that you have control over. For me, I know I want to use that gift for love. To love God, to love those around me, to make the most of the time that I'm given. And I hope that we all do that. So as we prepare our hearts for Christmas, as we prepare to celebrate the coming of our King, as we celebrate His birth, let's look around us. Let's look at what we're grateful for, and let's enjoy and be grateful for this moment and use it to the best of our ability.